Supreme Court ruling undoing affirmative action in college admissions should have shocked no one. After appealing Roe and a litany of other established precedents, a supposedly conservative court cemented their legacy as extremists.
Elie Mystal is in the building. Hi.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to talk amongst friends on this sad day.
Yeah, I was like, come on in. What you doing today? You were like, what time? I was like, come on, let's go. For you, Angie says she stays angry.
Yeah.
Where are you with this? We saw it coming. We knew this was going to happen, but now that it has happened, how do you feel? And then tell me what you think.
I mean, look, I've known I was going to have to deal with this decision for probably the past 20, 25 years. In my personal travels, let's put it like this. In my travels, nothing has pissed white people off, white liberals off, quite like affirmative action. You can name any other policy, and the thing that will rankle under their skin is this idea that somehow their privileged, private tutored cherubs might not get an extra bump over some Black person who they are sure is taking their kid's spot at an elite college or university. They have zero-summed gamed this to the point that they think that any Black person that is in an elite college probably didn't deserve to get there over their kid. And so with that as the setup, and this is what I wrote about in The Nation, with that as the setup, the idea that this policy was coming down from the Supreme Court has been, I think, part of my consciousness, like I said, for at least the past 20 years, because they hate it so much. It was almost inevitable that eventually a predominantly white Supreme Court, with the help of their boy, Uncle Clarence Thomas, would do this.
So now that we're here, my position is, I knew this was coming. I think you're absolutely right. First week that I showed up at Drew, somebody told me I was just there because of a program. And then that set the framework for my next 4 years, because did I have fun? I was like, that's what the last thing you want to say to me. But I feel like, not everyone should have a fighting spirit. We shouldn't go to school to fight. We shouldn't feel less than or bad, or we shouldn't have to defend ourselves when we're in these spaces. We are bringing value just by bringing ourselves into all of these spaces. So I'm like, let them eat cake. At this point, you want to munch on the privilege of your whiteness, then you can do that, and you're going to miss all your seasoning. So good luck with that rice with no curry. Don't put no curry, no jerk. Don't eat nothing. Just keep your bland white rice with no salt, because you also don't know how to use that properly, and see how that turns out. I feel like they're going to find out that this diversity thing is actually beneficial to their little cherubs. And the absence of that is going to actually destroy their ability to be a well-rounded human being.
Well, that's why colleges and universities, especially the good ones, especially the elite ones, will do everything in their power to keep as much diversity as possible, because the people who run those colleges and universities, predominantly white people who are in charge, understand that the educational environment is better for everybody if the classes are more diverse, and they will do everything in their power to try to keep as much diversity as possible. And we see, I'm not just speaking out of the back of my side, right? We see evidence for this in California. We see evidence for this in Michigan. In other states that have banned affirmative action at the state level, we see the elite universities in those states, the University of California, the University of Michigan, doing everything they can to still attract African-American students. It doesn't work nearly as well as it does.
No, it works much worse.
Right? It's much worse for everybody, but they're still going to try. So I don't think that they're going to stop trying because of the educational benefits of affirmative action. I think the problem is obviously that Black students who want to go to these elite universities, the applications, the acceptance rates are going to plummet. That's what we see in the evidence. But just to round out the point, Karen, there are not a lot of elite, rich, white parents who even want to send their kids to an all-white university, right? Or to not every white parent wants to send their kids to Baylor, right? wants to send their kids to Pepperdine. Even the parents understand that some, diversity is good for their kids. They just don't want that diversity to take the spot away from their kid. That's what it always comes down to. Diversity for thee, not for me. Make sure that my white kid gets in. And that's always what this has been about.
Yeah. And I think when we shift our perspective to the Black students, they are going to really have to decide which institutions support them and apply accordingly. Because what the Supreme Court has done today is essentially said what you can't do. They did create a little carve out about what institutions may do, and that is consider race in a very narrow sense. If a student writes about race in their essay, but they have to write about it in such a way where they're explaining how race has impacted their experience and how it has impacted their character and what they can contribute to the institution. So what this creates now is a fork in the road. Institutions that care about diversity, like Elie said, can choose to tailor their messaging to invite such essays that says to the applicant, hey, we are going to listen to you explain your experience, and you can talk about what you want, including race. Institutions that don't care about those Black students and brown students and Asian students and Indigenous students, they are going to not do that. Their messaging is going to be clear that you can't include any of this talk on your application. So we're going to have to be discerning. And by the way, as you're talking about your experience, Elie, and the experience of students in higher education institutions, I'm thinking about my experience working at the law firm. I went to Howard. I went to an HBCU, undergrad and law school. Yet, when I went out there in the private sector in the world, what I got was, you're only here because of affirmative action, not higher ed affirmative action in hiring. Mm-hmm. And so you still encounter that. And that is going to be an issue still with respect to private institutions. They're also going to fall in line the same way. So we're going to see precipitous drops of diversity in those institutions as well. Not legally, but as a practical matter.
Oh, as long as there's one Black person who's let in, there will be one salty, mediocre white person who's kept out, who's like, not fair, it's only because they're Black. Like, that's always going to happen. But I want to say one point to Angie's point, pulling off of Angie's point with this idea, with this fail-safe that Roberts and the conservatives are using. Oh, you can still talk about race in your college essay. That is an incredible burden shift, right? In the law, we call this burden shifting. Like, who's responsible for doing this work? It takes the responsibility for understanding about racial diversity and equity away from the admissions counselors, basically, and puts it on the shoulder of an 18-year-old writing their college essay. This is a point that my wife actually made to me after the ruling that I think is really important that people need to understand. I didn't write about race in my college essay, because I had other things to write about. I had other things that I wanted to promote about myself and my character and my worthiness, right? The idea that I have to now waste time in my own college essay explaining to some admissions counselor how racism works in my life is an anathema to me. All right, it's not something that I should be required to do. It should be enough for the admissions counselor to take that burden and do that work. I shouldn't have to waste time in my precious, 1,500 word limit essay to explain to an admissions counselor how racism works in America. Are you kidding me? And especially as now at 45, I probably could, but as an 18-year-old, that's an incredible burden that Roberts and the conservative majority of the Supreme Court are just not only placing upon the shoulders of Black and brown 18-year-olds, but doing it as if that solves the problem they themselves created in this decision.
Can I ask how this opinion has obviously the obvious effect now on higher education, but what are the ripple effects for this in other parts? Are there government programs that are going to be impacted by this? Or was this ruling narrowly tailored enough to just be about this? I'm going to guess no, but you tell me.
Well, I will say, like as a formal legal concept, this case is about this case. It's about UNC, it's about Harvard. But if you look at the summary, basically the intro to the opinion, the court understands and it tracks cases that flow from education cases that extend to busing, that extend to public accommodations law. They are fully aware that this opinion is changing the course of society, even if they can sort of say technically it's only about Harvard UNC. Again, as I emphasized earlier, Harvard was the gold standard, not only for admissions programs across higher education, but recruiting committees and hiring committees in the private sector beyond higher education. So now every institution is thinking, we don't want to get sued. We better adapt. And they're following their lead from this case. The court knows that. And the court will cite this case in other contexts. So it's only a matter of time. They have laid out the rationale and now they can just refer back. So I think lawyers in general counsel's offices across the country know that. And we're going to see some changes in how they look at recruiting, hiring, admissions, et cetera.
It's like when you breach a hole in a castle, right? When you blast a hole in the wall, you don't have to tell the rest of the troops where to go. They see the hole. That's where they're going.
Oh, right. So good. Yeah.
So 866-801-8255. We're going to take some calls because I promised. Sina Gasnavi is here. Angie Marissa Porter is here. Elie Mystal is here. I also had my team tweet out your Nation article that came out today as well. You went to Harvard, Elie, and I imagine you were told by your parents that was the way to success, the pathway to success. You went to Harvard. I think you got your master's there and your law degree. Looking at this now, the value of that Harvard education provided what?
First of all, I didn't get a master's. That was too much school for me. I thought
you had 2 degrees from Harvard.
Just the BA, just the undergraduate degree, and the law degree, not the third degree. So just to be clear, what was the benefit of that to me? I'll tell you. Really, it's really clear. I was a big law Manhattan lawyer. Right. That was what I was trained to do. That's what I was doing. And I hated it. And I decided, at 27 years old that I wanted to get into journalism. Didn't want to go to journalism school because, again, that's more school and that's more money. I just wanted to get into journalism. Well, how did I do that? I basically ended up sending out cover letters to 100 different magazines, news organizations, and in and around New York City. And I was like, I don't have any journalism experience, but I have 2 Harvard degrees and I'm willing to work for free. And I got a job, Karen. I got a job, right? And that kind of started me on what is now my career. If I was trying to pull that with Princeton, probably. If I was trying to pull that with the University of Michigan, maybe. But at some point, there is a thing that doesn't happen on my resume when I'm sending out that cover letter that makes most people say, bruh, go to journalism school if you want to be a journalist and get your funky cover letter out of my inbox.